everything you'd expect from a leading cancer center. But Mercy also offers something more that's hard to put your finger on, but easy to get your arms around.
Home Shopping Club, where celebrities feel right at home.
I'm Beverly Sassoon. Enjoy fresh, healthy skin with Psychology Skincare System, only on Home Shopping Club.
I'm Jack LaLanne. Increase your energy and stamina with Fit Over 50, only on Home Shopping Club.
Hi, I'm Brenda Dycraft. Bring out the champion within you with my complete line of fitness products, only on Home Shopping Club.
Home Shopping Club, great bargains, guaranteed.
This is CNN.
We'll see you in 30 minutes. Inside Politics is next.
Before that, we're going to check in with Jan Hopkins at the New York Stock Exchange for the latest business news. Jan.
Thanks, Lou and Cheryl. A late sell-off on Wall Street today. Investors bailing out after the market's recent run-up. The Dow Jones Industrial Average ended the day with a loss of 15.21. The Dow at a level of 3257.60, down from its record close yesterday. Volume very heavy, almost 262 million shares traded today. The broader and the secondary markets finished mixed, with the NASDAQ index of over-the-counter stocks hitting a new record high. Federated Department Store stock was among the most actively traded issues here at the New York Stock Exchange. It was up 3/4 at 17 1/4. The company emerged from bankruptcy today and began trading here at the New York Stock Exchange. The Treasury announced today that it will sell $36 billion worth of debt for this quarterly refunding next week. It plans to sell fewer long bonds to take advantage of lower short-term rates. The Treasury's 30-year bond right now is up 7/32, and the yield 7.73%. That's the latest in business news. I'm Jan Hopkins reporting live from the New York Stock Exchange. Stay tuned for Inside Politics coming up next.
He's trying to dodge it, but Mario Cuomo is facing a draft. Some Democrats don't think the candidates already battling for president pass inspection.
And John Sununu home in New Hampshire, trying to smooth conservative waters for the boss who gave him the boot. Asset or liability? We tally up the balance sheet on Inside Politics 92.
This is Inside Politics 92 with Catherine Crier at the CNN Center in Atlanta and Bernard Shaw in Washington.
If anyone doubts that the political season has arrived in Washington, what happened today will clear that up. First, an election year conversion. Last year, Congress had to ram an unemployment extension down the president's throat. This year, a very different tune. The Congress has passed another extension, and today, White House spokesman Fitzwater says when it arrives, Bush will sign it. Now, the rough stuff, the president's remedy for the economy. He wants it passed by March 20th. Hold on, says the powerful chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, Dan Rostenkowski of Illinois. He and other Democrats are working on their own plan that would cut taxes on the middle class and raise taxes on the rich. Gut puncher of the day, Texas Senator Phil Gramm, who linked Rostenkowski's plan to the ways of communism.
Basically, the Democrats are trying to create the same economic class struggle by talking about raising taxes to offset incentives, to try to pit one group of Americans against another. They're trying to create the class struggle that failed in Eastern Europe and failed in the Soviet Union, and the fact that it's still working in Cuba, I guess, gives the Democrats hope.
I think Phil Gramm is trying to confuse the issue because they haven't got a good package. There's too much pain in what they want to do to the American people, to the sick, and to the indigent. We just cannot continue to cut programs when people are almost starving in this country.
Bush kept trolling for support, going before a friendly audience of business leaders and asking them to turn up the heat on the Democrats in Congress.
So let them know in no uncertain terms. Business as usual won't get this job done. Election year politics as usual won't do. And tell them we need action by March 20th. And with your help, I believe we can get it.
Well, our senior White House correspondent, Charles Bierbauer, settles in now to talk about the politics of this fight. Charles, what's the White House strategy in this election year?
Well, let me characterize it this way. I've had Democrats say that the strategy is a win-win for George Bush. That is to say, if Congress passes this economic plan, he can claim it's his. And if they don't pass it, he can blame the Democrats primarily in Congress. The strategy is to put the Democrats on the spot.
And the Democrats, Rostenkowski says that they're going to pass a proposal. The president's going to get his proposal, but it's going to have some Democratic positions in it.
Well, he's saying actually that there's going to be a Democratic proposal and a Republican one, and let the people choose on that. He's also saying he won't buy George Bush's approach, which is to say pass this short-term proposal now. Rostenkowski says he wants to deal with the whole idea, long and short proposals. Bear in mind, George Bush said he doesn't want any quick fix, but he's the one who's asking for quick action.
Charles, is the White House betting on the American voters' inability to separate President Bush from politician George Bush, who is seeking re-election?
Well, I don't think you can separate that, and I think we're all probably savvy enough to know that this is a political year, and virtually everything is politics. How do you separate the two? The other thing that caught my ear is this idea of class warfare, which we heard Senator Graham say today. Senator Graham is the guy who just the other day said, all my friends are rich, and then President Bush himself is calling it a political class warfare. If he's trying to be presidential and making political charges, no one's going to see that that's anything but politics.
Charles Bierbauer. Catherine?
Well, gentlemen, while the Democrats are plotting their bushwhacking strategy, they're also taking a hard look in the political mirror. Some are worrying about what they see. Some party pundits fear their frontrunner for president, Bill Clinton, has lost his biggest asset, the electability factor. CNN national political correspondent Gene Randall says that concern could boost a write-in campaign for a non-candidate named Cuomo.
This is the National Draft Cuomo Committee.
Concord, New Hampshire, temporary home for the National Draft Cuomo for President Committee. Its goal, to convince this state's Democrats that Mario Cuomo is their party's only hope for defeating George Bush. Begun soon after Cuomo announced he would not run in December, the write-in effort has taken on new life. Why? The argument that Arkansas Governor Bill Clinton is damaged goods.
Bill Clinton was running on the issue of electability, and I think everyone recognizes that that is a shattered issue for him.
In fact, the latest CNN USA Today Gallup poll shows that while Clinton's standing among Democrats is way up, from 17 to 42%, a survey of all registered voters, not just Democrats, tells a different story. Those who view Clinton unfavorably tripled, from 10% to 32%. Mario Cuomo may have contributed to that. Case in point, a Jennifer Flowers tape of a phone conversation with Bill Clinton.
I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't have some mafioso major connections.
Well, he acts like one.
You're really attacking the democracy in a fundamental way. When you say nigger, kike, mafioso, when you pit the groups against one another, you're dealing with the fundamental character of this place.
Governor Cuomo gives no sign he is ready to go along with the draft, though it is known his supporters have lined up uncommitted slates of delegates ready to back him in all 20 of Illinois' congressional districts. At last week's House Democrats retreat in Maryland, there were quiet suggestions the issue of electability may get other Democrats to run.
Some of the party elders, some obviously from labor, and some of the financial supporters of the party have been discussing it really in the last 4 or 5 days. I've heard quite a bit about it.
Among those being talked up, House Majority Leader Dick Gebhardt and Senators Lloyd Benson of Texas, Al Gore of Tennessee, and Jay Rockefeller of West Virginia. The Boston Globe, meanwhile, reports that President Bush's re-election team has adopted a hands-off approach on Bill Clinton, convinced that tabloid allegations about his personal life would make him a weakened nominee, a welcome prospect for the fall campaign. The immediate objective for the Draft Cuomo group here in New Hampshire, getting at least 15% of the vote in the February 18th Democratic primary. With no active encouragement from the New York governor, in the view of draft organizers, it would be an impressive showing and a sign that primary voters, too, are concerned about the issue of electability. Gene Randall, CNN, Manchester, New Hampshire.
And hoping to hear from would-be supporters, the Cuomo write-in campaign set up a phone line, aptly numbered 1-800-92-CUOMO. But there's a snag. Dozens of people are dialing COUMO instead. Seems they can't spell the governor's name, a hitch that could be a real headache for a write-in campaign. Well, Cuomo's on and off again flirtation with the presidential race has been fodder for humor and rumor, but what's the real chance of him or any big-name Democrat becoming a late entry in the contest for commander-in-chief? Joining us from New Hampshire to ponder that question and the electability issue, our political analysts Jack Germond and David Broder. Jack, recalling 64 and Henry Cabot Lodge, a write-in campaign has worked in the New Hampshire primary, but Cuomo's not cooperating. What are the chances here?
Well, unfortunately, I'm old enough, so I was here for that campaign. And Lodge didn't cooperate either. That campaign was run by 4 people in a small office on Main Street in Concord, and it was done through the mail. But it started a lot earlier than this, and it was pretty sophisticated. I'm not sure this one is as good in terms of mechanics, but it's early yet.
David, what about others in the wings?
There are others in the wings, Kathy, but this race is really among the 5 people who are on the ballot here in New Hampshire. I think the chances of anyone really getting into this race are small, not impossible. If Governor Clinton should really take a bad stumble between now and the time of the New Hampshire primary, I think we might see other candidates. But otherwise, my bet would be heavily one of these 5 men will be the nominee.
Well, David, then you wouldn't take the comment as any sort of signal coming from Democratic National Party Chair Ron Brown, who discouraged Cuomo, said get in or get out in December, and yet was quoted as saying Cuomo could still get in, it's never too late, we could get around the technical problems.
It is not too late, and the technical problems can be solved. If the Democrats decide that one of the a late starter should be their nominee, they will, despite the rules, find ways to get delegates to that person.
All right, David says maybe not. Jack, will we see anybody else come into the race for the Democrats?
I think it depends entirely on what happens here on the 18th. If Clinton were to lose, I think he would be very seriously compromised, probably destroyed.
All right,
because it would be taken as evidence that he has been crippled by this personal stuff. In that case, the question is whether any of the other candidates is seen as electable. If they are not, then there's more pressure to bring in a Gephardt or a Cuomo or something.
Well, on that note, real quickly, Jack, what if he comes in second, Tsongas in his home territory comes in first? Is that still as much of a slap?
I think so, because the expectations are so high for Clinton. He's been ahead in all the polls. I don't think he can afford to lose here.
Well, David, what about the political match going on between Congress and George Bush? Where's the fallout there? Who could get hurt?
Both could get hurt, but I think that George Bush is not hit on a bad wicket at all in taking on the Congress and trying to divert some of the voters' anger toward the Congress. Congress is an institution that has about as low a reputation as we in the press do, and it's not a bad punching bag for George Bush to use.
Jack, what do you think about that, this whole notion of class warfare, listening to some of the comments coming out of Phil Gramm?
I think, I'll tell you the truth, I think that most voters are so sick of politicians in both parties and all this blather back and forth that the kind of thing that we're just talking about with Phil Gramm on the one hand and Rostenkowski on the other and the president goes right over most people's head. They will look and see what finally happens and then make a decision. There is, however, I would suspect, an inclination to distrust Congress more than the president.
Well, Jack, you've been there on the ground in New Hampshire. Anyone really catching fire?
No, it'd be nice if somebody did because it's very cold up here. It hasn't happened yet.
Well, David, what about the race for third?
The race for third at this point is supposed to be between Senator Harkin and Senator Kerry. But I want to tell you, I think that this voting is so unsettled that we will see dramatic shifts here in the last 10 days, 12 days that we have left. I'm not telling who it's going to be, but these voters are still looking around to decide who they want to support.
Well, Jack Germond, David Broder, thanks for joining us today. Bernie?
One of life's little coincidences will be shadowing George Bush next week. Wednesday, the president formally declares his running for re-election. And then he heads up to Manchester, New Hampshire to campaign. Guess who might be in the neighborhood? It looks like Mario Cuomo will be talking about welfare reform the same day at an issues forum in nearby Cambridge, Massachusetts.
A pit bull let loose from the White House, now seeking fresh political prey. Coming up next on IP 92, John Sununu back in New Hampshire, stumping for the guy who gave him the axe. Does his bark still have bite? And later in this half hour, George Bush plays political catch-up on the hot issue of health care. We get the color commentary from our media politics man, Rick Allen.
when you send flowers out of town, you give the order to somebody who takes a cut. Then he passes the order to somebody else who takes a cut. But now there's Flowers Direct that actually lets you speak to a florist in the town where you're sending the flowers. Flowers Direct, or We Cut, is the middleman. Call Flowers Direct now, 1-800-621-2121.
Right now, when you book a Holland America Line cruise or cruise tour to Alaska, you'll save up to $300 per couple, which means you can enjoy exquisite service and the spouting of whales, all at a remarkable value. There's no better way to see the great land than with the most experienced travel company in Alaska, and no better time to see your travel agent than today.
Flu epidemic declared. Entire U.S. affected. What will you do? Doctors recommend Theraflu, hot liquid medicine that works fast. Theraflu, strong therapy for flu symptoms.
You may not recognize their faces or know all their names, but they have decades of experience covering politics, the White House, and Capitol Hill. They've worked for the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the Washington Post, every major publication and network. They're the best at what they do. CNN introduces the most distinguished team ever assembled to follow the 1992 elections. From start to finish, you'll get the whole picture of Campaign USA 92 only on CNN.
David Duke won't be on North Carolina's primary ballot, and Jerry Brown is scrambling to get his name included. It seems the Brown campaign never answered a letter asking for confirmation that their man would run in the Tar Heel state. The Brown people are heading for a fax machine to try to get North Carolina officials to add his name. Duke missed the deadline to present enough signatures to be on the ballot. Meanwhile, David Duke says this is his last campaign for the foreseeable future. Duke telling Reuters he wants to spend more time with his children, writing and lecturing.
A man perceived as one of George Bush's political liabilities is alive and kicking on the campaign trail in New Hampshire. CNN's Candy Crowley has been on the trail of the late and not necessarily lamented White House Chief of Staff John Sununu.
If you weren't looking, you could miss him. Usually, he's just outside the center ring, to the right of center stage. Another face in the crowd.
How are you, Buck? Nice to see you.
John Sununu is home in New Hampshire, politicking for George Bush, the man who ousted him as chief of staff because Sununu's pit bull personality had become a political liability.
I am have been always and continue to be a strong believer in a president I admire and respect, and know that it's best for this country to get him reelected. And secondly, I'll go up to New Hampshire on the drop of a hat and talk to people. It's always fun to do that.
Sununu's political power in New Hampshire rides mostly on his 6-year tenure as governor.
How are you? Good, how are you? I'm the greatest ad for Dunkin' Donuts in the world, you know. That's good to know. That's good to know. I had to know every location in the state when I was governor.
His clout was clear 4 years ago when he delivered the New Hampshire primary victory to then-candidate George Bush.
Back in '88, I thought he was very powerful, but now I think he's lost some of that power.
But though he is a native son of New Hampshire, Sununu is not necessarily her favorite son.
That's a 50-50 question. He could be perceived as, you know, he's a real nice guy, trying to do his best for for George Bush. On the other hand, there's a lot of people in this state who just don't like him. John Sununu is one of those people you can love him or hate him. Ain't no in between.
The Manchester Union Leader, the state's leading conservative paper, now backing Pat Buchanan, welcomed home Sununu with a lead editorial calling him a peripatetic political pimp. But Bush campaign supporters say this is less a matter of popularity than philosophy.
It's not the popularity or unpopularity of John Sununu that's seeking to be transferred or rubbed off onto George Bush, but rather John Sununu's ability to validate the conservative credentials of George Bush that I think is what is sought here.
Translation, John Sununu came home as living proof to New Hampshire conservatives that George Bush is still a true believer, no matter what Pat Buchanan says. Down the road beyond New Hampshire, Sununu, who will replace Buchanan as a co-host on CNN's Crossfire, says he'll be there for his ex-boss. Pit bulls, after all, can be valuable so long as you can deny ownership. Sununu on what he said to Bill Clinton recently.
Couldn't wait for him to win the nomination because I was going to beat his brains in politically.
Granite State wisdom holds that John Sununu's assets and debits in New Hampshire will likely make him a wash this year for George Bush. But politicos on both sides agree Sununu could have been a liability had he not shown up. People, it seems, would have read more into his absence than his presence. Candy Crowley, CNN, Concord, New Hampshire.
We'll be hopping on the healthcare bandwagon next on Inside Politics.
The first question ought to be, where does it hurt?
Democrats have seized the healthcare turf, and now George Bush trying to make up lost ground.
Ricola, the all-natural herb cough drop imported from Switzerland. Ricola has been soothing throats and relieving coughs naturally for over 60 years.
For those of you who have been reluctant to wear a hearing aid, Miracle Ear has more great news. If you have trouble hearing in noisy situations, the exciting Miracle Ear Clarifier may be your answer. The Clarifier features a special filter that automatically reduces background noise.
In a restaurant situation, it picks up the noises I want to hear, but the other noises are just moved off into the background.
If you or someone you know thinks they may be suffering from hearing loss, call Miracle Ear at this number and receive helpful information.
It really makes a lot of difference in your way of hearing and in your way of life.
Call this number. Miracle Ear will send you a booklet on better hearing, plus a coupon for a free hearing test. Call today. Learn about all the good news from Miracle Ear.
A lot of people don't even know you got it, especially the one I got, the design that I got.
Call this number. Find out if Miracle Ear can help you.
There's constipation and there's constipation. Oh, yeah. When it's this bad, take it to the max. New Maximum Relief Formula X-Lax pills with 50% more X-Lax medicine for maximum relief. Oh, yeah. Take it to the max.
Today, Tektret Shoe Corporation announced a major retail expansion in 25 U.S. cities.
When I see a company that looks like a good investment, I check it out myself. At Charles Schwab, I can get quotes, financial news, and when I make a trade, commission savings.
For free information about Schwab services, call toll-free 800-257-1257.
Time to check your scorecards. Bill Clinton continues to lead where it counts in delegates to the Democratic Convention. The AP's latest survey of Democratic National Committee members gives Clinton 6 more delegates since Monday for a total of 76. Tom Harkin is up 2 with 25. Bob Kerrey has 15. Paul Tsongas and Jerry Brown 2 each. 189 DNC members are uncommitted. 2,144 delegate votes are needed to win the nomination.
Over 35 million people are dead. 1,700 cities and townships are destroyed. 6 million Jews were annihilated. War is a symphony of destruction.
Diesem Deutschland singst du, wird heute Deutschland in stolzer Freude deines...
Orchestrated by few and paid for by many. Now Time magazine allows you a forbidden look at World War II in a 2-part video set entitled World War II, The Untold Story, free with your paid subscription to Time. We've gathered unique films from the War Department and combined them with captured enemy footage, some never seen before in public. These 2 exciting videos can be yours, free from Time magazine. Let Time take you behind the scenes in politics, the arts, and social issues. Call now, and you'll get 26 issues for 3 easy payments of $9.89 each. That's almost 55% off the cover price. And we'll include World War II, the video set, for free. Fly with pilots on actual fighting missions and lay low in the trenches with our GIs. Help storm the beaches of Normandy and see confidential footage of Rommel in the desert. There is a horror to the nightmare of war and a glory. Call this number now and get great savings on Time magazine and your World War II video set free. This offer won't be available for long, so call now.
The Teamsters Union won't be on George Bush's team this year. New union president Ronald Carey says an endorsement of Bush is absolutely out. He says the Teamsters want a candidate who's going to treat labor fairly and will join most other unions in seeking a Democrat to defeat Bush.
Some critics accuse him of being a Johnny-come-lately to the issue, but tomorrow in Cleveland, President Bush is scheduled to formally take the lid off his remedy for America's health care system. His plan centers on vouchers and tax breaks to help low- and middle-income Americans buy health insurance. Bush would pay for the program by curbing costs and waste in the Medicare and Medicaid programs. Like it or not, this is the speech Bush has to make. As our media politics pundit Rick Allen is here to tell us.
Well, Bernie, one of the wisest political pundits of all time was a fellow named Alexander Ledru Rollin. He was a 19th century French statesman, little known, but he left us with a wonderful quote. He was the fellow who said, "There go my people. I must find out where they're going so I can lead them." President Bush is going to Cleveland, where he hopes to catch up on one of this year's hottest issues.
If this Bob Kerrey campaign commercial sounds familiar...
When someone gets sick, the first question ought to be, where does it hurt? Not how will you pay.
It's hardly any wonder.
And when a family hears a sick child cry in the night, never again should they have to worry as much about the size of the bill as they do about the seriousness of the disease.
4 years ago, Michael Dukakis tried to make health care an issue, but he got nowhere. His own political condition, an advanced case of perceived liberalism, threw him on the defensive. But since then, a sick economy has left 4 out of 5 Americans naming health care as a major issue. And just as important, Democrats now feel safer talking about it because of this man.
Friends,
Harris Wofford won an off-year Senate election in Pennsylvania, running hard on a call for national health insurance. In beating Dick Thornburgh, a presidential proxy, Wofford sent Bush a message.
if he doesn't act, these issues we're talking about will be major issues in the presidential election.
As a virtual one-issue candidate, Bob Kerry's been trying to make universal health insurance his political calling card.
You'd end up with a card that looked like that.
Good for free care. But the other Democratic hopefuls are refusing to concede the issue. Tom Harkin says Kerry's plan would raise payroll taxes and cost more than $200 billion.
Maybe that's why his health care bill has 0 co-sponsors in the Senate and House of Representatives. No one is co-sponsoring his bill.
But does Harkin have a better idea? Not exactly.
Am I here today to tell you that I have every T crossed and every I dotted? No, I don't. And that would be unrealistic.
Families are being wiped out by rising health care costs.
In the emergency room rush to get health care ads on the air, like this Paul Tsongas commercial, the goal of the Democrats is to co-opt the issue, first among themselves and later against the president this fall.
Senator Tsongas has a good health care program that has some strengths, frankly, that Senator Kerry's plan doesn't have. Senator Harkin and Governor Brown, everybody running for president has promised to provide affordable health care to all Americans.
And no Democrat has a kind word for the president.
National health insurance has been a Democratic issue since the days of Harry Truman. On Thursday, under duress, President Bush begins playing catch-up. His plan, a grab bag of tax credits for the poor, tax deductions for the middle class, cutbacks in Medicare and Medicaid, is drawing fire from everybody. Of course, some folks will say the Republicans are new at this sort of thing. But what it means is we've got an issue that'll be around all the way to the wire in November. Catherine?
Thanks, Rick, and we'll continue our healthy political diet tomorrow. Bob Kerry, Mr. National Health Insurance to some in this campaign, will be the special guest on Thursday's edition of IP 92. And that's it for this edition of Inside Politics. I'm Catherine Crier in Atlanta.
I'm Bernard Shaw in Washington. Thanks for watching. Cheryl Atkinson has a preview of what's coming up next on Early Prime.
Bernie, just ahead, the law moves in again on the doctor who helped these women kill themselves. Why efforts to save sea otters means trouble for California fishermen. Mere months after tycoon Robert Maxwell mysteriously dies, we'll tell you why his widow is selling off bits of his luxurious lifestyle. Early Prime continues with Lou Waters and me in just a moment here on CNN.
Coming up, Early Prime continues, followed by Showbiz Today, after a word from your local cable systems, next on CNN.
I've decided I want to live in a house.
There's a new member of the Crier family.
Haven't had any violent spells in a long time.
One they don't know about yet.
Who's that?
Holly. Neil.